it's another week, which means it's another round of matches for the Champions League. We're on match day 5, so it's all coming down to these last matches to see who gets into the knockout rounds and who doesn't. So hit like and subscribe, all of you beautiful people in the House of Champions YouTube family, and let's get after it. Yes, what is up, everybody, and welcome to the House of Champions. I'm Ian Joyce, stunt double, Jimmy Conrad. I'm here with two of my favorite people, Nigel Reo-Coker and Hollywood handsome Heath Pearce. I think I said that wrong. It's handsome Hollywood Heath Pearce. I don't know. Nigel gave me this nickname. I'm like, why do we have to keep giving these more nicknames to Hollywood Heath Pearce? But here we are, and we're going to talk about the Champions League. Match day 5 is upon us, and there's a lot of implications as to who is going to get into the knockout rounds and who is going to drop into the Europa League and who's going home. So we're going to start with the Tuesday matches, and that is going to be Group G. So Sevilla is going to be hosting FC Copenhagen, and Borussia Dortmund is going to be hosting the mighty Manchester City. You can see the table right there if you're watching on YouTube. If you can't, I'm going to read it out to you right now. Man City, 3 wins and a draw on 10 points. Dortmund, 2 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. They're on 7. And Sevilla and Copenhagen both on 2. So that Sevilla-Copenhagen game is very important. But I think all eyes, Nigel Reo-Coker, are going to be on Manchester City heading to Germany to take on Borussia Dortmund, the black and yellow. How do you see that game playing out? Because this Dortmund team seems to be rounding into form.
Jimmy, it's not even worth discussing this group. Let's be honest.
Erling Haaland's going back to Dortmund. He's going back to Dortment.
Okay.
How many goals is he getting then? Let's start there.
That's just the fairy tale of it. Haaland's returning back to Dortmund. I'm sure he's probably going to score. This group is decided. Manchester City and Dortmund are going to go through. Seville and Copenhagen don't have a chance whatsoever. So
okay.
This group is pretty much decided already, realistically. It's just going to be about the return of Haaland at Dortmund. That's all I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just to add on to that, Jimmy, I don't even think we'll see Haaland play because they're already on 10 points. It's an opportunity to rotate him. And yes, maybe the Dortmund fans want it, but maybe it's a situation where it's a rare opportunity to rest him in the form that he's in to just protect him from himself. Jimmy, I don't want to be a spoiler of all this, but why not I would keep him out of it. Like, I would let him come in, wave to everybody, do his little parade, walk around, and stay off the field because, you know, I wouldn't want that for him.
Remember, he's going to have a lot of time off during the Christmas World Cup.
You got to play him.
He didn't qualify. He's going to be able to rest during the World Cup period, ready for the second half of the season.
That is true.
So
but he earns $950 million a week. And so I would be protecting that asset a little bit every once in a while, knowing that that's the case. And by the way, Jimmy, Dortmund not in the greatest form at the moment. They lost last weekend to Union Berlin, and then they put a spanking on
I got recency bias. They had a 4-0 win this weekend, and that's all that really matters to me. Okay, it's total recency bias.
That's fair.
But aren't we in the entertainment business? I mean, when the draw happened, this was one of the big storylines. Erling Haaland's going back to Dortmund to face his former club. They got to give it to us. Pep Guardiola's got to give it. He doesn't owe it to us, but he's got to give it to us for entertainment purposes. I want to see him go up against some of his old friends, and Jude Bellingham, Gio Reyna, and all these guys that he was close to for a little while. I don't know. I think that this is going to be a great game. I think Dortmund's going to be up for it.
I think Dortmund went up. They went up 1-0 on the first one, right? And then I think Haaland had the winner. Did he not? I could be wrong. Completely.
Yeah, they were up.
That,
they were up.
Yes, that's when Haaland scored that kind of
Marco Reus.
Oh yeah, that was sick.
Oh,
I remember that. That was wild.
I think Pep will give Haaland the swan song of returning home. I definitely think so. I don't think he'll play a full 90 minutes at all. I think maybe he might give him half a game just to keep the guys fresh and keep them motivated. But that's about it. But that group is done, really and truly.
Yeah, so Sevilla's in third and Copenhagen, they're both on 2 points. That one will have implications. Whoever finishes in third, for everybody that doesn't know, drops into the Europa League. And Sevilla's definitely going to want to drop into there. They obviously have great success as a team.
Sevilla's going to want to pick up their domestic form first, Jimmy, though.
That's true.
Greatly domestic.
No, that's fair.
Hey, Copenhagen's going to want to pick up their domestic form. They haven't scored in the group stages of the Champions League. Their last goal in the Champions League, Copenhagen, was their first qualifier of their 2-legged play-in into the Champions League, and they haven't scored since then. So they got a lot.
Of work. There's a lot of work to do for both of those clubs, but it will be interesting. There is something at stake for both of those, and I just wanted to add that. All right, let's move over to Group E. We got RB Salzburg hosting Chelsea, who are coming off 1-1 draw with Manchester United. Dinamo Zagreb hosting AC Milan, who are coming off a great win themselves. Milan 4-1 over Monza this weekend. The table, Chelsea is on top with 7 points. Salzburg on 6, so it's a battle of the top 2 in Austria on this match day 5. Zagreb on 4, Milan on 4. So obviously there's a lot of implications. This group, what I love about Group E is super wide open. Heath, I'll come to you first. What are you expecting out of both of these matches? And what do you think the scores are going to be? Give me some predictions while you give some analysis.
Yeah, there's some weird implications in this. Obviously, Salzburg, as you can see, still the only team undefeated in that group. But they're taking on Chelsea, who need to win this one and truly need to. If you go back to the first result, Graham Potter's first game was the Salzburg match where they were able to come out with the draw. And then AC Milan having to get a result against Zagreb. The good thing is I talked about Erling Haaland and Man City and rotation, whatever. AC Milan are going to play the best team. They don't have to play anybody difficult in Serie A from now until the break for the World Cup. So they need to be able to establish themselves in this one. And then Zagreb just naturally haven't played well against AC Milan historically. And so I think it should finish out in the way that we see it now in the table, I would think. But FC Salzburg, if they're not able to, or RB Salzburg, if they're not able to get a result against Chelsea, even a point, it leaves that door wide open for AC Milan to slip in and Salzburg maybe fall out after being undefeated after 4 match days.
No, Nigel. AC Milan had 4 points after 6.
Okay, it's 3 draws. I know I'm creating some false narratives by saying undefeated. It's 1 win in their 4, but they're still undefeated.
I don't know. Milan though, 4 points. They had 4 points after 6 games last time around. Seemed to be stumbling again. They lost back-to-back games to Chelsea, Nigel, but they did beat Dinamo Zagreb in Italy on match day 2, 3-1. That's a big one. Do you think Milan's gonna get in and get into the knockout rounds?
Yeah, Milan's gonna get in. I see a Milan win and I see a Chelsea win. I think it's going to be Chelsea and Milan to make it through to the next stages.
Wow.
Chelsea haven't been convincing as always, but I think that Graham Potter knows that they have to win this game. It's not a game they can take easy and say, okay, we can rest on our morals, that we'll be okay. It's a game where basically all these games in this group, it's in their own hands. They're not relying on other results. So I feel when it gets to that kind of nitty gritty and that kind of pressure, I can see Chelsea definitely going as strong as they can, going all out to get the win against Salzburg, even though they're away from home. I feel they've got that extra bit of quality that's needed. And I think that they're growing stronger as they continue to go. Even without a convincing performance against Manchester United this weekend, they got the draw. So I think that they'll definitely go for the win there. And I think AC Milan will beat Dynamo Zagreb because they know what's at stake as well. And I can see Chelsea and Milan making it out of this group.
I will say, Jimmy, last point on that is that AC Milan do host FC Salzburg in the last match day of the group stages, and that if they are able to get a second, if they are able to get a win on this match day 5 and leapfrog a Salzburg, assuming they lose to Chelsea, they would be up a point, and that changes the whole dynamic of the result that they'll need to get. So this one obviously hugely important.
Yeah, it's really important, and it will set up for a very exciting match day 6, no matter really how it plays out. I mean, Milan's got to win to obviously keep it in the conversation, but Chelsea only given up 1 goal in their last 6, and that was that Casemiro header that barely eked over the line this past weekend. So definitely having it figured out on that side of the ball, which is interesting from Graham Potter. You kind of liken that type of style or that type of clean sheet statistic to Thomas Tuchel, but fair play to Graham Potter for kind of finding a new way for them to get results. All right, let's move over to the next group, and that will be Group H. So we got Benfica is hosting Juventus. Obviously, Benfica coming off a big win away from home against Porto, and then PSG taking on and hosting Maccabi Haifa. Now, PSG are on top of the table with 8. Benfica have 8. Maccabi Haifa have 3, and Juventus have 3. Maccabi Haifa with the big result against Juventus at home, 2-0 on match day 4. I don't know, Nigel, where do you want to go with this one? I think that PSG are probably going to end up winning this overall, but this Benfica-Juventus result is interesting. If Juve can beat Benfica, that would put Benfica on 8 and Juventus on 6. And then there's probably a last chance, last gasp, but Juve is going to have to host PSG to get a result potentially. They got to win their last 2 and hope that Benfica don't. So there's a lot of luck.
Jimmy, have you seen this Juventus team recently?
I have.
Listen, let's just say
they just put a beating on, who was it, Empoli over the weekend or something?
Come on. That's not
Let's go. Weston McKennie, huge game. Let's go.
Last game, Nigel. Come on.
Listen, the old lady is looking very old in the Champions League and out of context, right? The old lady needs to reinvent herself because the only team in this group that can throw a spanner in the works of a result is Maccabi Haifa. They really are a difficult team at home. But I think that this group is going to stay as it stands. It's going to be Paris Saint-Germain and Benfica that go through to the next round. Juventus right now are in a complete rebuilding process. And in the rebuilding, in not just the players and the recruitment, but also I think the manager has to come under question now because they've been nowhere near it at Champions League level.
Yeah, Heath,
I
any
agree.
thoughts on this group in particular?
I mean, only that where I see the risk is that obviously Benfica are playing at home against Juve, and Juve need to win this one. Unfortunately, Benfica are, I think, unbeaten in 17, something like that, close to 20 matches since the start of the season across competitions. And so it is going to be a very difficult match for them. But they need to win out. Juventus have to win out to have any chance, and they need some help from Benfica along the way. And I just don't see that happening in this one. And then obviously I expect PSG to take care of business against Maccabi Haifa after giving up, drawing twice against Benfica in the group stages.
Yeah, what I find interesting, and Nigel, let's just talk about a bigger narrative around this group in particular. I think Christophe Galtier with PSG has done an excellent job of finding some harmony between his star players, maybe something that lacked under Mauricio Pochettino. And we know that's probably more to the style and implementation of a system overall, which I think gives those guys a little bit more freedom to combine and maybe not worry about it so much defensively. But I do see some leaky defending from PSG, and maybe that's because they don't have that many numbers, which I think can hurt them in the knockout rounds. So they're going to be fine in the group stages. So I want your thoughts on that, but I also want to hear your thoughts on if Juve get knocked out and drop into the Europa League, or don't even get fourth and don't even qualify for anything else. At what point do you think Maxi Allegri, it's just going to be so undeniable that you got to fire Maxi Allegri that Juve would do it, even though he's going to be here the whole season, pat on the back from the board of Juve?
Well, I'll start with that first, Jimmy. I think it's very strange. I don't think they're going to sack Maxi Allegri. I think that the fans are backing Maxi Allegri. And again, I think it's because of a bit of a past love affair with Maxi Allegri and what he did for the club previously to what they can see now. Because what they're turning their attention to is they're claiming that the players who are wearing the shirt are not fitting, not deserving of wearing the shirt. And it's not the manager. The club have come and said they're going to back him. We're going to stick with him to the season. It's a building project. So it's a difficult situation. I think for a club like Juventus, if they do drop into the next competition, the UEFA League, that is a realistic competition they should aim to try and win, just to bring in some silverware, just to represent and respect the magnitude of the club. Because there's the players have to understand now, there's going to be no changes. There really is going to be no changes. Vlahovic hasn't been as good as we thought he would be. I thought he would be a lot better there. But again, when you've got a player like Vlahovic, it's the same conversation we've had. He needs service. He hasn't had service. Di Maria's come back in. Now he might be injured, but he'll be ready for the World Cup. No surprise. Paul Pogba came in as a creative tool. He hasn't been fit, but he's going to be ready for the World Cup. Hasn't played in perfect harmony for what Juventus might have imagined or wanted. But the reality is the performances just haven't been good enough domestically as well as in Champions League level. When you talk about Paris Saint-Germain, Jimmy, I think for me, they've always been questionable defensively. I think that they're a great team. Without a doubt, they've probably got the best attacking threat the world football has ever seen, with Mbappe, Neymar, and Messi involved in that. But defensively, they've always been questionable. And I think as well as they're gelling into a bit of a team dynamic currently at the moment, playing against good oppositions who also have half decent threats going forward, there'll be loads of problems caused in this Paris Saint-Germain side, because defensively they've still been questionable. You look at every game that they've played in the group stages, they've given good opportunities to opposition. And I don't think they're the solid full package.
I think what's going to happen, and this is me speculating, of course, because you never know, but when Chiesa comes back in January, when Angel Di Maria gets healthy, they're just a different side. And then Philip Kostic, who they got from Eintracht Frankfurt, who had a great assist this past weekend against Empoli to Moise Kean, they need more of that from him in the Champions League in particular if they're going to have any chance to get into the knockout rounds, especially in place of that creative engine that Angel Di Maria is. So yeah, I agree with you that I don't think they're going to sack him either. I think they're going to give him a chance to get Chiesa back into the team. Then we'll see what that Juve looks like. Pogba will be back in the team at that point too. And then they're going to really have their top 11 to choose from, but they might be suffering a little bit until then, which could see them get knocked out of the Champions League. All right, let's get into
question. Wait,
go ahead.
How much of a miss do you reckon Dybala is for Juventus?
It's really hard to pinpoint. It's a great question. It's really hard to pinpoint what the miss is for Juventus right now, right? Is because if you go back to last season, they were missing what felt like pieces to being the Juventus that we had of old. Now, Juventus aren't the team that you look at in the way that you did in the past, where you say, well, Serie A is automatic. And then the part two to that is, can they win the Champions League? They're building a team for the Champions League. This team isn't built to win Serie A, and it's not built to win Champions League either, in terms of just the pure quality they have on the field. Now, is Dybala a miss? Absolutely. Is Pogba a miss right now? Absolutely. Is Chiesa a miss? Absolutely. But you add all those pieces together, and do they win out in the group stages? Maybe. but they're still not an 11 player or a 16 or 17 player deep team that you're able to look at and go, they should cruise through the group stages and at least finish in second comfortably in this one. I don't know if you had your best team on the field and you added those pieces, would they still be good enough to get out of the group stages? Maybe not. I don't know. What's your take on that?
I think he's a big miss. I think he's a big miss because we can see what he's doing for Roma right now. And he was that kind of X factor to a similar degree. It's what we say about how Sadio Mane is such a big miss for Liverpool. I'll put Dybala in the same category for Juventus. He really is the big mix, the X factor, can make things happen in that final third, can create and also score goals. And that is what they're really struggling to do right now. And we all know when you're playing in a team, you can have great players, but when you're not winning, your confidence goes. Your confidence takes a knock. And again, unless you get the right manager in place, the right coach in place, with the right characters and personnel in that team, you can find yourself in a very dark place very quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Juve do in particular. And there's a couple clubs that are in this situation of should they sack their manager, should they not, and how that could impact their future moving forward in the short term and in the long term. All right, let's move on to our last group. Now, all the groups we've talked about so far are the ones that are happening on Tuesday. We'll take a break and we'll get into Wednesdays, but we're going to get into the last one here, and it is Group F. So we have Celtic, the mighty Celtic, hosting Shakhtar Donetsk, and RB Leipzig hosting Real Madrid. Madrid are on top with 10.
You can't, Jimmy, you cannot call them the mighty Celtic in context of Europe.
Thank you, Heath. Thank you.
You can call them the mighty Celtic.
How mighty are they?
The one and only mighty Celtic.
Call them the mighty Celtic in the context of Europe.
Sorry, you could say the well-supported Celtic. Well-supported.
This is my inside joke. When I was a kid, I played for the Upland Celtic on loan, and their cheer was the one and only mighty Celtic, and then we go out and take the field. So it's kind of just been stuck in my brain. All right, Real Madrid. What's that?
Did you guys were you actually big and mighty, or how were you guys as a team?
Well, I was a loan player just for tournaments, and we were all right. You know,
they loaned you out for tournaments.
Yeah, you could at that time you could do, because you were registered with another youth club, and then if you wanted to go loan, because it was I was playing a year up, so it was okay if I play whatever. We don't need to get into.
Wait, Jimmy, you were a talented young player then. I didn't know that you got to play a year up.
I did. I played a year up.
Wow. Because
I skipped a grade when I was a kid, so it made sense.
Nigel
look at me. I'm so smart. I skipped.
I was smart. I don't know if I'm smart anymore, but I was.
Nigel played like 9 years up from the time he was like.
That's the big difference. Is we were thrown in with the big boys real early.
I don't know. I feel like Nigel was born with hair on his chest. He was already a grown ass man.
I was listening, Jimmy. Let's not get those jokes because I was born in England. Okay, I have my British birth certificate. I was born in London. Okay, this isn't one of those stories here.
All right. Let's get into Group F here. Real Madrid on top with 10, RB Leipzig on 6, Shakhtar Donetsk in third on 5th, and fourth, Celtic with 1. They're gonna. Well, thanks for coming to Group F, everybody there. But there's a battle there for second and third between Leipzig and Shakhtar. But Leipzig have to host Real Madrid. Now, in all due respect, Leipzig's been pretty good since they made the manager change from Domenico Tedesco to Marco Rose, and they're coming off of down 3-0 to Augsburg this past weekend. Scored 3 in the second half to make it 3-3. So a little momentum there where that tie feels like more of a win than it would be a loss, as Augsburg probably feels. Real Madrid, though, Carlo Ancelotti came out this weekend and said that this is probably the best team he's ever coached in his whole career. So they are absolutely flying right now, and they beat Sevilla 3-1 without Karim Benzema. Rodrigo, solid. We had Vinicius look great. Fede Valverde hit another banger, 3 goals in 3 games for him. And I don't know, going to Germany, maybe Madrid struggles a bit. But Celtic are going to be hosting at home at Celtic Park, Shakhtar Donetsk, who also needs points. Nigel, I'll come to you first. I'll go to Nigel first. Sorry, Heath. We're going to go to Nigel first. Anything you're seeing here? Who do you think is going to win the group?
Let's go with Heath first because
let's hear it.
The one note I wanted to say about this is if you go back again to just the punishment of mistakes in the Champions League or keeping yourself into matches is Shakhtar. If you look at the table right now, would have been on 7 points had they been able to squeak out that result against Real Madrid. We know that they did it a couple seasons in the past when Real Madrid was playing at the Alfredo de Stefano Stadium. But this is one where 95th minute, Antonio Rudiger gets them the point, secures that for Real Madrid. We knew they were going to go through. But Shakhtar Donetsk now in a completely different scenario than they would have been. And now they have to go about getting results in a different way. Against a Celtic side, by the way, who I do think are down and out. And Shakhtar are having to play away from home. Celtic are solid at home. But Celtic have now lost 7 of their last home matches in the group stages of the Champions League. So it's not like it's the fortress like we've seen or known Celtic to be. So this is one for Shakhtar. They could ruffle some feathers in this group and maybe even squeak out a second place finish against, like you said, Jimmy, an RB Leipzig side that's pretty good right now.
Yeah, they are very good. Any thoughts on this, Nigel?
Yeah, just Real Madrid is already done. Let's just leave them alone. Like you said, it's about that second spot. I think Leipzig have definitely turned it on. And this is what's interesting about this group is Leipzig and Shakhtar are no easy teams to beat. They know what's at stake. Yes, Celtic are a very well-supported team. I don't know about the mighty Celtic, as Jimmy said, but they're very well-supported in the sense of that. They'll want to play with pride. It's a difficult place to go and get a result, but I think Shakhtar know what's at stake. Shakhtar have that Champions League experience more so than Celtic, especially in the most recent couple of years. And you just feel that really and truly, Heath, this is about that second spot. It really is about that Leipzig and Shakhtar. And I would personally just tip the slight edge to Leipzig to go through over Shakhtar.
Well, yeah, by the way, I think the final match day 6 is Leipzig against Shakhtar. So it could really come down to that as a final moment, which
that's what I think it could come down to. Yeah. That last game will be the one that's definitely needed.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. All right, everybody, we're going to take our first and only break of the House of Champions. When we come back, we'll break down all of the groups that'll be performing and playing on match day 5 on the Wednesday slate of things. So don't go anywhere.
The UEFA Champions League on Paramount Plus. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath exhilaration. That's brilliant! With more magic and more drama. While a former Bavarian nails the back of the net in Barcelona, an American trades his stars with zebra stripes, and a Norwegian creates sky blue spectacles. So stream every sweat-soaked second of regulation time, stoppage time, and extra time. Beyond magnificent! This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live, exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Jimmy,
you're muted. Jimmy, you're muted. If you're coming back right now, man. For those that, by the way, for those of you that are just watching this right now, Jimmy is muted, or those who are listening to it, Jimmy was on some sort of rant right now, and maybe we should implement a mute ban because Jimmy is now trying to figure out how to get himself unmuted. And I would love, Nigel, at some point to be able to have those, like any of those whip around shows where you can just take that mute button to somebody and just say, hey,
press it.
Hey, whatever you're saying right now is completely invalid, and we're going to hit that mute button for you. But I guess, Nigel, we're going to jump in next then until we get Jimmy back, because it looks like he hopped off and dealing with some technical difficulties. But coming out of the break, let's move on to Group C then. And obviously, we'll throw up Group C right onto the board here for the matchups. But we got, I just lost it there. Barcelona taking on Bayern Munich, obviously an Inter playing against Victoria. Inter coming off of a huge last gasp win over the weekend in Serie A, and now coming into this one. Bayern Munich perfect in this one before taking on Barcelona. Barcelona needing that result as well as they play against Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich have been very good. Here's a little bit of a fun fact for you on the Barcelona Bayern front, is that Bayern have dominated Barcelona in the last 4 games, scoring 16 goals. And conceding only 2. Bayern's so good, but obviously Lewandowski also co-top of the Golden Boot race with Erling Haaland, and so that's going to be a matchup there. I mean, what from the Bayern-Barcelona game or Inter Victoria Pilsen are you interested in? Obviously, Inter needing to win to keep themselves in that second place spot, but Bayern Barcelona fighting to steal that second spot and get into the knockout rounds.
Heath, I think Bayern Munich can really throw a spanner in the works in this group. They're comfortably through to the next round. Now they can really tinker if they want and change their team around. But again, is it something that Bayern Munich will do because of what it means for Champions League and the records and the games and everything that goes on there? But I feel they have an opportunity to throw the spanner in the works. I think for me, Barcelona still is a work in development, because every time they've come across that 1% club, that club that's seen in the same kind of league as them, they've struggled. They haven't got the results. They lost to El Clasico. They lost to Bayern Munich. They lost to Inter Milan. So you really do worry whether Barcelona are at that level where they can beat these 1% club, especially what's at stake now. So it's going to be very, very interesting in this group. And I personally think that Inter Milan have that belief right now and that desire. If they can play with the same commitment that they took to the new camp, I think that they should be able a match and be able to beat anyone, really and truly. If that desire and that commitment, they can definitely get the results. I would say favor would lie with Bayern Inter going through, and I just can't see Barcelona doing it. I think that.
Well, here's where it gets a little tricky, though. I mean, you go down to match day 6, and Barcelona have to play away to Victoria Pilsen. Which, if you're Barcelona, you like that. They're on 0 points. They've lost all 4 matches, and Inter Milan have to get a result at that point, potentially against Bayern Munich if it goes this way. So, are you still sitting on the fence and suggesting it finishes the same? Because it's going to come down to it.
It's definitely going to come down to it. But then you got to think again. By that time, Bayern Munich are mighty through already anyway. And then you got the World Cup coming. Some players might not need to play in there already. You got to think about the next round of the Champions League, injury risks, and domestic form. So they're going to have an opportunity where they could rest so many players. And I know there's still going to be a high level of expectancy from the players that come in to perform. But still, if they lose, it's not going to be the end of the world because they're comfortably through already. So that's what you got to look at as well, where there's more desperation from Inter Milan and Barcelona than there is from Bayern Munich.
Okay. From the experts' mouth to our ears, I think this is going to be a really tight group that we're going to have to figure out who goes through on that one. I'm not confident of anything.
You're not confident?
Certainly. Well, I'm not confident that Barcelona aren't going to go through.
Hey, Heath, I'm telling you now, I'm confident. I think I'm confident now that they won't go through. They really haven't been able to beat teams who are as established as they are in that 1%. Dembele has been on absolute sensational form. My thing when I look at this Barcelona team is they play great football, but they are lacking that real bite in the final third. Lewandowski's got goals. He's done well when he can, but against better quality and high-end oppositions, they struggle. They keep great possession, but they lack that bite. Everything goes through Dembele currently. Everything is about Dembele, and it's becoming too much.
Yeah, I mean, Barcelona have to get past Bayern at home in match day 5, and then on match day 6, they'll take on Pilsen. If they can get to that point with the result, I like their odds. However, Inter Milan in this one, playing their final day against Bayern, I don't know, man. Well, I'm gonna ride with you on that. So let's move on. Let's move on from that one. Let's move to Group A, where we got Ajax taking on Liverpool, and Napoli will be playing Rangers, a very defeated European Rangers in the way that they came out against, not the way they came out. They came out really strong against Liverpool to start the match, and then fell apart, giving Mo Salah his quickest hat trick ever in 6 minutes or 9 minutes or something crazy like that. But in this one, as I mentioned already, you've got those matchups of Ajax taking on Liverpool, Napoli on Rangers. Is there any one of those standing out for you that you want to discuss, or is this group pretty much wrapped up?
It's a difficult one. I think Ajax have a chance, but it's not in their hands. It really is in the hands of Liverpool and the performance that Liverpool puts in. Like I said, Liverpool is going to be very inconsistent. It's really hard to kind of predict. What they need to do is Ajax definitely need to beat Liverpool in their next matchup to give themselves half a chance. Napoli are clearly through. Rangers, for me, don't have a chance at all. And I think Napoli are going to put Rangers to the sword again in their next encounter. I would still say, just because of experience and the players that they have and management, I'll give Liverpool the edge to make sure they definitely get through to the next round.
Yeah, and they only need, obviously, a draw in this one. I'm playing away at Amsterdam Arena is never an easy task, but Liverpool are still Liverpool at the end of the day.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Against an Ajax, maybe against the Napoli, I would say something different, but against an Ajax who've only got one win so far in this group stages and multiple draws, I think Liverpool can figure out a way to add to that draw list and make it a 4th draw and secure themselves a spot in the final round. All right, so let's move on from there then, because that one's pretty well organized. We'll get into our final 2 groups. Group D now. We'll move over to that one with Spurs taking on Sporting Lisboa and Frankfurt playing against Marseille.
Say it again.
You like that?
Sporting
Lisboa.
Lisboa. Oh, so it's not
Yeah,
Lisbon.
Lisboa. No,
Lisboa,
it could be Lisbon.
Okay.
Lisbon if you want.
The British among us will say Lisbon. You go Lisboa.
Yeah, Lisbon.
Okay.
Yeah, I call it Lisbon as well. But once in a while, you got to show that you've traveled a little bit, been to a few places and know how the locals might be able to say that. All right, so obviously in this one, Spurs coming off of a loss over the weekend, a tough loss, by the way, and then and Sporting playing in this one, and Frankfurt playing against Marseille. This is another group, probably the closest group of any of the group tables with for those of you that are listening to this, Tottenham sitting at top of the table with 7 points. Marseille just behind them. They also lost, I believe, over the weekend with 6 points. Sporting on Sporting Club do Portugal. I don't think it's Sporting Lisboa anymore. Sporting Club do Portugal on 6 points, and then Eintracht Frankfurt, the Europa League winners, sitting just behind them on 4 points. So matches that are wide open and definitely going to go down to the fourth or the sixth and final match day to have a decider. But with regard to match day 5, Nigel, Tottenham taking on Sporting, Frankfurt versus Marseille. What do you want to see in this one, and who do you see coming out of this match day with the points?
This is tough. I mean, Heath, for me, when the performances in the games that I've seen, I would have to say Eintracht Frankfurt, for me, as much as they've still got a chance, I'll probably say they're the least likely to make it through. Tottenham, for me, are in control. They play better when they play that 5 in midfield, as we saw them play today against Newcastle, but just lacking that real bit of bite in the final third. I think that Conte is going to want a reaction from that game, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on Tottenham this weekend, and I can see them getting the job done. I think for me, Marseille are probably the one that's mostly inconsistent in that group, where some games you'd expect Marseille to get the result and get the win. They got a good thing going at the moment, but they still have that little bit of inconsistency about them. Sporting Club Portugal, as you said, Heath, I think they're the surprise package. I think they really are a well-coached team, and this is why Aston Villa are currently chasing their manager and very interested in him coming to take the Aston Villa job. But I think that there could be the team that could get out of it with Tottenham.
Yeah, I mean, look, and here's the reality in terms of Marseille is they are just not, obviously weren't able to get a result recently against PSG in the league. They lost to Lens over the weekend. They were able to get a result against Sporting on the 4th match day. But just their league form alone, the reason that we are mentioning them in the greater context is they were in a title race in Liga, but their form has recently dipped. They're not getting those results. That this is sort of their I hate to get into the whole like salvaging of the season because they can still finish in a Champions League spot and they're still a fantastic team, but they are in prime position in a group that's very winnable, not necessarily winnable, but in terms of reaching that goal of qualifying for the knockout rounds, they are in a prime position to be able to do that. However, for them to do that, they're going to have to be able to get a result away from home against Frankfurt. Do you think that they could finish all 3 points against the Frankfurt side that, like you said, you don't think will go through?
I think they can get it against Frankfurt. Yeah, that's the thing. They can get it, but again, it just depends which one turns up. Again, it goes to the inconsistency factor. We've seen it when they've been in great position, league form, but it's recently dropped. So there is still questions about that. And I just think that for me, Frankfurt are just not quite up there yet at that level when it comes to quality-wise, player-wise, to be able to compete in this Champions League.
Okay, and now Spurs Sporting, right? As I know you've already touched on, but this is a big one, right? Because if Marseille win, that puts them at 9 points. And then Spurs Sporting, if Spurs were able to pull this off, regardless of their weekend result in the Premier League, if they pull this off, that's going to create a really tight final day where you would have Tottenham on 10 and safe. You would have Marseille on 9, and then it would come down to that final match day. Do you see it sticking like this, Group D table with Spurs on top, Marseille second, Sporting third?
No, I think Sporting will get the result. I really do. I think Marseille will let it slip somehow. But the big thing about this group, Heath, is it's going to go down to the last day. It really is going to go down to the last day. And don't get me wrong, I won't say Tottenham are just the out-and-out favourites and the clear best team in the group. No, because they have their moments too. Obviously, like you said, they lost today to Newcastle. You can clearly see what Conte's been saying about this Tottenham side, that they still need another 2 or 3 transfer windows in order to be able to compete at that level of competing for Premier League titles and also competing in the Champions League. So he knows what he's talking about. He's a manager that's been there and done it. And he's calling for strength in depth. So this group is still open, but I'm going to go with my gut and saying that I feel that Tottenham and Sporting will be the 2 that make it out of this group.
Okay, there it is. All right, well, so let's move on to our final group then. Group B. This is a wild one for me when we look at the Group B matchups, just because as you look at the table, Nigel, and as if I were to come back to you at the very beginning of these group stages, and I said to you, Club Brugge would be sitting at the top, undefeated, on 10 points with 2 match days left. Would you believe it? Would you believe that they've been the ones sort of taking the points on everybody? 3 wins in the group stages so far. I mean, it's wild. There's not a weak team in here. You got FC Porto, behind them on 6 points. You got Atletico Madrid on 4 points. Bayer Leverkusen, who had a slow start to the Champions League as well as to their actual domestic campaign. Just another big club. I mean, would you have believed it if I told you they'd be on top and disrupting this whole thing? Because if you were Atletico or FC Porto or even Bayer Leverkusen, you go, I like my odds to get out of this group stages. And now they find themselves in trouble with 2 match days left.
I wouldn't have believed it, Heath, at all. I think for me, when you look at Club Brugge, they've been consistent in the fact of being in the Champions League for the past 5 or 6 years consecutively, no problem. But to be competing at the level that they are right now, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Atalanta, when Atalanta came in and surprised everyone with the football and the style of play. But what Club Brugge have been doing very well is the recruiting. A lot of top young talent from around Europe are playing there, and they're applying their trade in the Champions League, and they've been doing fantastically well. I think this is the one thing that I don't think anyone would have predicted to see in this group right now. But I think that there's not going to be much change. I think Atletico Madrid, yes, they do like a little late invite to the party, as we know. But I just don't feel they've got the players that's needed at that club to be able to spoil this party. I think it's going to finish as it is, with Club Brugge and Porto being the 2 teams that go through. Bayern Leverkusen, again, another German team that's done well, but not really at that quality level that's needed for the Champions League with what's at stake now. And I can't see Atletico being able to turn it around as they normally do.
Well, for context sake, right, you've got Atletico Madrid taking on Leverkusen. So points to be taken from somebody that are below the line right now in this match day 5. Do you think that'll be a split of points and they'll be both stuck down there, almost taking the loss of not getting a full 3 points? Because both Bayer Leverkusen and Atletico Madrid go into this match needing all 3 points. Do you think it'll finish level because of that?
I think what makes it interesting is that Bayer Leverkusen, if they get the win, that's 6 points for them. So they're still in the race. So both teams can't take it easy. They both really have to go for it. There's a lot at stake. And it could be one of those ones where Bayer Leverkusen just have to treat it like a cup final. And when you come out like that mentality, that real aggressive cup final, life or death kind of moment, you can shock people and get the result. Because we know what we're going to expect from Atletico. It's going to be sit back, defend, try and score, get a goal in a counter-attacking situation. But if they go 1 or 2 goals down, they're a different team. They're not the same animal that we saw under Diego Simeone 5 or 6 years back.
And then looking at Club Brugge taking on FC Porto, an opportunity for both of them to cement themselves into the knockout rounds. I think Club Brugge is already there, obviously, but for FC Porto, a win for them in this one would secure themselves a spot and really secure that 1-2 in the group stages. Do you think that they see Brugge as a winnable match, considering that Brugge have been the team on top of the table and cruising through this entire competition?
Yeah, I think that they do see it as a winnable match, as well as Brugge has done, as surprising as they've been for everyone to see. They're still a young, inexperienced side, so to speak, where Porto has a greater amount of experienced players in that team. You're talking about Pepe still there as well, playing and doing really well, leader for that Porto team. So they
crushed Leverkusen twice, and Leverkusen,
yes.
Again, another young squad and not the same, quality that we saw from them last season, but Porto, smashed on them both times in back-to-back matches. So they've obviously got some quality, but they lost over the weekend, obviously, to an unfortunate red card, but they lost over the weekend to Benfica domestically. Do you think that will have any sort of shaping or effect on the way in which they approach this one against Brugge away from home?
No, I think it will be the same. I think it will be a very experienced Porto side we're going to see out there. They're probably going to go there, and they know that the game doesn't have to be won in the first 15, 20 minutes. They'll be well organized, well disciplined. And if Brugge take unnecessary risks, you can see Porto capitalizing on that because they've got the greater experience in the sense of the players that they have at that club. While Brugge, as we discussed, is still a young club, a lot of tremendous young talent. But with that, there's no price for experience. There's no price for experience in the game of football. And that's what Porto have.
That's well said, Nigel Reo-Coker with some unbelievable analysis. And by the way, I never really updated people that were listening why Jimmy Conrad never came back. His computer crashed.
It was artificial intelligence.
But yeah, it was just, again, he had to pay the price of his computer not coming back online, and he wasn't able to join us. But I'm telling you, Nigel, that just means more room for talking for you and I, more fresh air, open air for us to take it and run with it as we please, as opposed to Jimmy always quarterbacking us and pushing us into the things that he wants to get out of the show. But that's it. That wraps it up. Any final thoughts from you, Nigel, before we close out this show?
Looking forward to New York. Looking forward to this week's Champions League. We've seen some exciting group stages games and just can't wait to get into it to see. And as we know in football, you can never write teams off because anything is possible. And the best saying I heard in football when I was young, Heath, was, "It's a funny old game."
It is a funny old game indeed. So thanks so much for listening to House of Champions. Please take a minute and leave us a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're also available as video, so subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to make sure that you are getting each and every one of these videos, whether live or on demand. And on behalf of myself, Heath Pearce, Nigel Reo-Coker, Jimmy Conrad, partially until we lost him, our production team. And of course, this will all go back to being your standard regular programming with the crew that runs this show. It's been an honor to be a part of this, and we will see you guys next time.